Hello and welcome to your Vinyasa intermediate class breakdown. So we've already looked at the structure of a beginner class and how you really want to take your time to explain everything. Perhaps you'll be demoing a lot more. An intermediate class is a little bit different because there's not so much explaining. Again, you assume that the student already knows the meaning behind why they're doing so many things, such as singing Aum or the meaning of the mantra and things like that. So you'll be demoing a lot less. In fact, I want to encourage you to be off of your mat as much as possible. And particularly right now, what we're going to be taking a look at is the difference between a Hatha class and a Vinyasa class. Although the structure remains the same, there's just an extra Shavasana in a Hatha class, we're going to also look a little bit at how we can link our asanas together in with a theme that we choose. So let's take a look at our 9-point system. It would be 10, but since we're skipping out a Shavasana because this is a Vinyasa class, it's going to be a 9-point system. Let's take a look. So in the past, I've mentioned that it would be ideal to divide your students by levels. So a beginner level and an intermediate or advanced level would be ideal so that you're not lost explaining everything and demoing everything. However, a lot of the time we find multi-level classes. Everyone is welcome, everyone does what they can. So there's a few things that we want to remember, especially when we're teaching an intermediate class, because sometimes it could be a beginner who has made a mistake and has booked into the wrong class. It could be someone who perhaps thinks that they're more advanced than they actually are. It could be a drop-in that we often see, especially if they're traveling. So let's take a little look at how we would teach an intermediate class, but keeping in mind that it's a nice reminder for people to hear little explanations of things, and maybe you have a mixed or multi-level class. So, like always, we're going to start with an introduction. That's our point number 1. Here for your Vinyasa Intermediate micro lesson, we're going to ask you to choose a theme. It can be any theme that you want. We've had loads of different themes in Gayatri Yoga School. We've had kids classes and pregnancy classes where absolutely everybody, even people born with testicles, had to belly up and put a blanket underneath their shirt. We've had a nutritionist talk about healthy bowel movements as her theme for her class. We've had all of the elements, all of the chakras. A particularly interesting class that I remember a student gave was 24 hours in one asana class. And so the meditation was waking up, Surya Namaskar was lunchtime, and then the asanas were the afternoon, and then the end Shavasana was nighttime. So it was very creative. You're allowed any theme that you want. Just remember the power that you have when you're relaying your theme to your students. So you really want to take care of the words that you choose to describe things, because in the same tone, you can be very powerful and you can be very disruptive and destructing. So remember the power that you have as a teacher just by using your words, and you're going to link your theme into everything that you do. So your introduction could be introducing your theme, letting everybody know, hello, today we are going to do a fire flow dedicated to the element of fire. Whatever it is, you might want to introduce that into your theme. But again, don't forget that you're still selling that yoga car that I mentioned in the Hatha micro lesson explanation. Yeah, this is your chance to connect with your students. So even the most intermediate and advanced yogis still want to have a reminder of what yoga actually is. I know that in my introductions, I always try and share something personal because it makes it a little bit more tangible or more available for the students. I often find that when I admit that I'm struggling, having a hard time, when I find that my ego really perks up, the students are saying, hey, I do that too. And so they're finding similarities and you're making it a little bit more relatable to them. So in this introduction, it's totally up to you how you want to introduce your theme, if you want to introduce anything, a reminder, anything in particular. Also, if you want to link a new mudra, a new gesture with your theme, say you're doing Anahata, so you'd like to connect Hridaya Mudra, and you want to teach the students what the new mudra, say you're going to do Lotus Mudra, and they can then do that for the rest of the class. This is your chance to do it. So this is your introduction to everything that's going to happen for the next hour or so. And then we still want to check in with injuries. Because even if we have regular students that are returning, you might want to check in with them. Sometimes something happens, say they sleep funny and maybe their neck hurts, or they bumped their elbow playing sports. And so you just want to check in. Are there any new injuries that I need to be made aware of? Just so that you can adapt the asanas that come later on in the class, so that you can make everything really comfortable for them. It might be useful just to mention again that you will be doing hands-on assists. Nothing too fancy. It's not like you have to ask everyone and make sure that they, wave their hand in the air. Just letting them know that you will be performing hands-on adjustments. And if anybody doesn't want the hands-on adjustment, then they are allowed to tell you and you will guide them verbally. It's just a nice little reminder. And then this cannot be skipped out. This has to be mentioned at the beginning and throughout the practice constantly. Stop if there is any discomfort. Bring the student's ego back into control, into check. So if they're really pushing themselves, if they're really forcing themselves, they need to take a break. Remember to ask yourself, why have I placed the student in this asana? What is the objective? What do I want them to feel? And so at any point, if you notice that they're pushing too hard, or especially if you're hearing their breathing out of ujjayi and they're starting to breathe, pushing themselves, that's when you need to remind them that they can take a break. So you don't have to demo Shavasana and Balasana, but you just need to mention it. If at any point you're uncomfortable, please come into either Child's Pose or Shavasana, and that is enough. So that's it for your introduction. We're going to change color, and we're going to come into tuning in. Now, for your micro lesson, just to keep things the same as we've always done, you're going to tune in with your 3 alms, your Gayatri mantra, and your Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. If outside of your micro lessons, when you're teaching another class, you want to sing Loka Samasta, you're more than welcome to. If you want to print out the mantra, maybe your students don't know the mantra, and give them a handout, and so make sure everybody knows what mantra they're going to sing, definitely do it. We're the Gayatri School of Yoga, and so we're going to keep things traditional the way that we do them here. For your micro lesson, you're just going to tune in the same way that we did for the Hatha micro lesson. There is nothing to explain. You don't have to explain who Gayatri is. You don't have to demo Om. You don't have to explain the sound of the universe. It's just tuning in. So it's placing your students in a comfortable meditation position, placing their hands in pranama mudra, which is something that we do as a sign of respect. So connecting with themselves. And from here, their eyes are closed if they know the mantra. Obviously, if they need to read the mantra, then you would be giving them a piece of paper to read. But for the micro lesson, they'll be tuning in, their eyes are closed, their eyes remain closed for a good chunk of this beginning part. We're gonna change color again, and we're gonna come into point number 3, which is the meditation. Now this meditation needs to be linked with your theme. So if you're doing a grounding earth practice, why don't you do a nice seed of intention planted underneath the soil, underneath your mat? However you want to link in your theme with the meditation. In the real world, the time that you're spending on all of these things really depends on the time that you have for the class. If you have a 1-hour class, your meditation can't be 20 minutes long. Otherwise, you don't have enough time for Surya Namaskar and everything else that needs to follow. Okay, so for the micro lesson, we're going to keep things super simple, and we're just going to have a maximum 3-minute meditation. Okay, in the real world, if you're giving a 5-hour workshop, why not make that meditation a 20-minute meditation? If they're intermediates, they already know how to control themselves. Yeah, so it's up to you, even if you just want to say a few words and then leave them in silence. Remember, you're never going to make everybody happy. Some people are going to complain that maybe you didn't speak enough, that they wanted to be guided a little bit more. Some people are going to complain that you spoke too much and they wanted to just remain in peace and calm and meditate on their own. This is very personal, so don't get frustrated, but try and be logical. Don't talk the whole time, and don't be too silent. It's like finding a balance, a little seesaw, finding a balance. So making that meditation maximum 3 minutes long for your micro lesson and linking it in with your theme. Again, we're gonna change color and coming into point number 4. Sorry, one thing I forgot to mention is that their eyes remain shut for this meditation. After you tune in, you place their hands in any mudra that you like, and you start with the meditation. Number 4 is going to be pranayam. So again, their eyes can remain shut this whole time. They don't need to see the pranayam that you are explaining for them. Presumably, if they are intermediates, they've already done pranayam. So they've already seen you explain anuloma viloma and where to pinch in your nose and where you can rest your index and middle finger if they choose. They've already seen these variations. So for your micro lesson, you need to link your pranayam in with your theme. So for example, if you're doing a grounding earth practice, why don't you do Brahmari, humming bee breath, and making it a loud bumblebee in the garden? You get to decide, but please, just for the micro lesson, no ujjayi. We did that for the hatha micro lesson, and we know that you know how to do it, so let's not explain ujjayi again. Find a different pranayam to explain. Obviously, their eyes are closed, but if you're explaining something very complicated and you really, Shamukhi Mudra, you really want them to see what it would look like, you can say, if you need to see the mudra, you can peek your eyes open. I'm doing the mudra right now for you. So it's obviously not a big deal, but generally it will help them listen and understand what you're asking of them if their eyes remain closed. You still need to maybe give a little bit of a demo, even if their eyes are closed. I find that even with the confusion between Bastrika and Kapalbhati, I find that a little demo is useful so they can just hear for you. Today we will be doing Bastrika. The inhale is the same length and strength as the exhale. Or for example, today we will be doing Kapalbhati. The inhale is soft and spontaneous and the exhale is strong and forced. So even if their eyes are closed, they can hear you demo whatever you need to demo. I guarantee you, almost always, you'll still need to do a hands-on adjustment on someone. So you guide the first few rounds, let them go on their own, and when they're going on their own, give some hands-on adjustments. I promise you, almost always, there's one person that hasn't understood what they're doing. Sometimes they get confused between right and left, so don't forget when you're explaining, for example, anuloma viloma, if it's getting confusing for you as well with right and left, what I like to do is I like to walk on one side of the room and say, here you're going to inhale where you can hear my voice being projected from, and on this side of the room you're going to exhale. Or you can use landmarks. So inhale mountain side of the room, exhale on the stone wall side of the room. Okay, so once they've gone on their own for a little bit, never stop a pranayama abruptly. Never just quit the pranayama. Tell them to do one last round on their own, and then they come back into their natural breath. That way they feel. And then, another color, we're coming into that shavasana. So in the real world, this shavasana would be anywhere between 2 and 5 minutes. For your micro lesson, just keep it to 10 Mississippi. What does that mean? That means in the real world, you would let them lie down and feel the benefits that this pranayama has created on your body and on your mind. For the micro lesson, because we're trying just to condense everything, we know that you know what a shavasana is, so just lay them in shavasana and just in your head count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, until you get to 10, and then slowly using your calming voice, wake them up out of shavasana. This is still the exact same structure for a hatha class. This could be a hatha class, an intermediate hatha class. None of this determines whether it's hatha or vinyasa. The structure is exactly the same. What's coming up next is going to determine whether it's hatha or vinyasa, right? So now comes, I'm going to put number 6 up here. Surya Namaskar. So you'll notice that Hatha Yoga has a different Surya Namaskar from Vinyasa Yoga. In Hatha Yoga, you have a different Sanskrit. So you stand in Tadasana, you come into Hasta Uttanasana. In Vinyasa, you come into Samastitihi, you come into Urdhva Tadasana, and so on. So Surya Namaskar is the first clue of what class have I come into, what asana class. Am I in Hatha or am I in Vinyasa? Okay. For your Vinyasa micro lesson, we are going to ask you to guide fluidly, no demoing, 2 times Surya Namaskar A. Now, from Shavasana, they need to make their way up to the top of the mat, and they're not just going to jump up. Don't forget, some people might have low blood pressure. They might get dizzy. So you need to instruct them to stand in a controlled way. And as soon as they are standing at the top of their mat, they are breathing in ujjayi. You don't need to explain what ujjayi is because they already know from the hatha. Pretend they're your hatha students. They came to your hatha micro lesson. It might be the same person, it might be somebody different, but they already know how to breathe in ujjayi because they're intermediates. So once you've instructed them how to guide, once you've told them to breathe in ujjayi, you are guiding 2 fluid rounds of Surya Namaskar A. And for those fluid rounds, they are holding Adho Mukha Svanasana, which is downward facing dog. I'm just going to draw a downward facing dog with a smile. And they are holding that for 5 deep breaths. Okay? Traditionally, you would be counting these breaths. Yeah? A good way to keep the class under control, it's like you're the conductor and they are your orchestra, is you can hear them breathe ujjayi. So you are counting their breaths. I normally pick the loudest ujjayi breather in the whole class and I refer to their breaths while I'm counting. This is a great moment to get some hands-on adjustments in. Okay. So then you are going to be doing 1 controlled round. So after your 2 fluid rounds of Surya Namaskar A, fluid means fluid. The only thing that they're holding is Adho Mukha Svanasana for 5 breaths, where you can get some hands-on adjustments on. But these 2 first rounds are nice and fluid so that they can warm up. Yeah, so guide fluid rounds of Surya Namaskar. Then comes a controlled round of Surya Namaskar A. And now there's no rules to how long they have to hold each asana. Watch out, they're holding the asana, not their breath. They are still breathing, so constantly remind them to breathe in ujjayi. Here, while they're in Surya Namaskar A, so you can get your adjustments on, you decide how long they're holding it for. Is it really messy and you need to adjust so many things? You want to bring their chest down, drishti, up at the thumbs, and so on and so forth. So they might be holding it for 8 breaths. It doesn't matter. You decide. Even Adho Mukha Svanasana in this controlled round, it's just 1 controlled round, just 1 time. You decide. When you adjust your student and you're finally happy with the adjustments and how they're in their asana, bring them into the next one. Yeah, the only place where it gets tricky is Chaturanga Dandasana. You don't have to hold them there for too long. Instruct your students that need to bring their knees down to bring them down. If you need to adjust something, tell your students to take a rest. Adjust what you need to adjust with one student and then bring them into Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, which is upward facing dog. Okay, so every single asana is being held in this controlled round. Not the breath, just the asana. Again, a little reminder. And that's going to be their Surya Namaskar warm-up. We are going to include a beat, but we're going to do it in a specific way. So let's take a little look at point number 7. Okay, so point number 7, which are going to be your asanas. If this was a hatha class, point number 7 would be a shavasana. And that shavasana would be a maximum of 2 minutes because you don't want your students to get cold. In vinyasa, there is no shavasana in between Surya Namaskar and your asanas. So the way that we're going to link our asanas in the micro lesson is with our theme. What does that mean? That means if you are guiding an earth class, you want to pick asanas where you can feel grounded. Maybe some asanas are close to the ground. Maybe some asanas are like a tree. So you link your theme in with the asanas. And we're going to ask you to choose 5, I'm going to draw a star, 5 main asanas. You can have more than 5 asanas, but the reason why I'm calling them star asanas is because you're holding these 5 main asanas for 5 breaths. Okay, so of these 5 asanas, you need to make sure that you have a twist. Don't forget that every single asana program needs to have a forward fold, a backward bend, and a twist. Now the forward fold you already have in Surya Namaskar, it's called Uttanasana. And a backward bend you already have in Surya Namaskar, it's called, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. And if you're doing Surya Namaskar B as well, then you have Virabhadrasana 1, which is Warrior 1, which is also a back bend. So you need to make sure that you get your twist involved definitely in these 5 asanas, and you can really shove a twist in anywhere. Now, again, you don't only have to have 5 asanas. You can have 2, 3, 5 more, but your 5 main ones you're holding for either 5 breaths, or if they're dynamic asanas, then you're going to hold them for 5 repetitions. Okay, and you can get creative. So say you want to do Warrior 2. Maybe you're going to do archers, and you're going to really arch. Say you want to play between reverse Warrior 2 and Warrior 3. Reverse Warrior 2 and Warrior 3. it's up to you. This is where the freedom comes in, especially dedicated to your theme. Tie your theme in with your asanas. Your 5 main asanas are going to be held for 5 breaths or 5 repetitions. Now here comes Surya Namaskar B. A lot of the time, asanas only have one leg. So, for example, Vrikshirasana, which is Ekapada Pranamasana, but the vinyasa name is Vrikshirasana. Vrikshasana. So you would be holding this, and right now my right leg is up, my left leg is grounded into the floor. So I would need to do this on the other side. We don't have to go in supine prone sitting standing. That's a hatha class. That's called Satyananda order. So we don't have to worry about what order. We can literally go from sitting to prone, to standing, to sitting again, to supine, to sitting again, to standing. It's up to you. You get to decide. However, if we do one asana on one side and then directly do it on the other side, that feels very hatha-y. So we want to try and avoid doing that. And the way we try and avoid doing that is we use Surya Namaskar B to link it in. So let me give you an example. Say you are performing, like I said, Vrikshasana, so known as Ekapada Pranamasana on one leg. Say you want to then do Trikonasana. Again, that's only going to be on one side. And then say you want to come into Ardha Hanumanasana. So when you're stretching out that front leg, you maybe want to take it down to the ground and stretch out that front leg. That's only on one side. So to switch over to the other side, we're going to either do a full complete Surya Namaskar B or half a Surya Namaskar B. So Surya Namaskar B is to change the leg. Now, Surya Namaskar B starts in Utkatasana. If you're starting your flow at the top of your mat, why not? When you finish in Samastitihi, you finished your controlled round of Surya Namaskar A, and now you want to get your students in prone, and you don't just want to say lie down in prone. So maybe you could start with one half of Surya Namaskar B, where you would start in Utkatasana. I'm not very good at drawing, but hopefully you'll understand. And then they'll go into Uttanasana, forward fold, and then Urdhva Uttanasana, halfway lift. And then they would step, walk, or jump back into Chaturanga Dandasana. They would lean down. And then before they come into Urdhva Mukha, they're already in prone on their mats, if that makes sense. So you could also use Surya Namaskar B as a way to link the movement. So you have them in prone. Say you want them to do Dhanurasana, bow pose. You already have them there, so they could do that. And then say you want them to come into those 3 asanas that I just said, Ekapada Pranamasana or Vrikshirasana, Trikonasana, and then Ardha Hanumanasana. So to come over to the other side, we would do a Surya Namaskar B, but we don't have to start from Utkatasana, because chances are if I'm already in downward facing dog, then I don't want to have to jump back up to the top of my mat to come into Utkatasana. I could just, again, do a Chaturanga, upward facing dog, downward facing dog, use Virabhadrasana 1, so use that warrior 1 that you have in Surya Namaskar B to get to the other leg. And then you would perform your Ekapada Pranamasana, your Trikonasana, and your Ardha Hanumanasana. Okay, so let me give you an example of what we could do. I've already given a few asanas as an example, so let's stick to those. Hopefully you'll understand my drawings. This is Ekapada Pranamasana. Ideally, you want to start using your Vinyasa Sanskrit. Okay, Hatha Sanskrit is the original. That's like saying we're speaking in Latin. Okay, and Vinyasa would be, Sanskrit would be a variation. So that's like saying we're speaking in French or Italian or a Romance language that derives from Latin. It's not wrong to use your Hatha Sanskrit. Chances are most people, if you're in a Vinyasa class, will understand the Vinyasa a little bit more. So this is Ekapada Pranamasana in Hatha Yoga. In Vinyasa, it's called Vrikshasana. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's how you spell it. Then we could do Trikonasana. I've just picked asanas at random. I don't know what theme I'm doing. This is just a random choice of asanas. And then say we want to do Ardha Hanumanasana, which is when you're essentially in equestrian pose, Ashwasanchalanasana, but then you stretch out your front leg and you give it a nice, a runner's stretch. So that foot looks a bit big. Let's make the leg a little longer. Maybe the person is even using a block. There you go. Okay, so Ardha Hanumanasana. Now say we choose two asanas that don't have a side. Say we choose Dhanurasana, bow pose. So they're on their belly and they're holding their foot. And say we choose, we need a twist. We're gonna do Supta Udarakashanasana. That does have a side, but that's in supine. It doesn't matter. So they're gonna do the universal spinal twist. And they're gonna do it in both directions. Okay, so for example, once we finished Surya Namaskar A, we finished the controlled round. Everyone is still breathing Ujjayi in Samastitihi. We could start in Utkatasana and perform one half of Surya Namaskar B up until Warrior One. So upward facing dog, downward facing dog, so Warrior One. Looking up at the thumbs. Okay, so from Samastitihi, Utkatasana, Uttanasana, Urdhva Uttanasana, Chaturanga Dandasana, Urdhva Mukha, Adho Mukha. Right leg goes forward, Virabhadrasana, Warrior One. And then from here you could say, bring your left leg up to the top. Maybe you could even take a little baby Utkatasana. If these are my 5-star asanas that we're holding for 5 breaths, or we're doing 5 repetitions of, if we're gonna do it dynamically. Then from Warrior One, if your right leg is forward, you can say, take a big step forward with your left leg and bring your right foot to the inside of your left thigh. So you can come into Vrikshasana directly from Warrior One. From there, then you would guide your right leg to take a big step back, and you could come into Trikonasana on top of your left leg. And then maybe you would come down on the ground and come into Ardha Hanumanasana on the left leg forward. And you would breathe for 5 breaths in each one of these asanas. Yeah? And then to repeat this onto the other side, you could take the other half of Surya Namaskar B without having to start in Utkatasana, because they're already close to the ground. They're almost in tabletop. Then you would have them. So say you've done, this is on your right leg. That's with your left leg forward, left. And that's with your left leg forward. So now, to take it over to the other side, you would have them come into Phalakasana. They would Chaturanga. And maybe while you're here in prone, you could shove in Dhanurasana. Bow pose. Right? So maybe while they're there, they hold it here for 5 breaths, or you could do it dynamically, inhale up, exhale down, inhale up, exhale down. This is where you get total freedom of how you want to display or how you want your students to perform the asanas. Then you would get them to come into upward facing dog, downward facing dog. This time, they're gonna bring the left leg into Warrior One. And then they take a big step forward with their right leg and bring the right leg into, or their left leg, sorry. They take a big step with their left leg. I'm getting confused. Warrior One. Okay. So then after Dhanurasana, they come into upward facing dog, downward facing dog. It's time for them to perform Warrior One, but on the left leg. So they bring the left leg forward, Warrior One. They don't have to hold Warrior One for 5 breaths. And then you're gonna say, take a big step forward with your right leg and bring your left foot on the inside of your right thigh. So you're going to perform Vrikshasana or Ekapada Pranamasana with your left leg. Then from there, if your left knee is out, then you take a big step back with your left leg and you come into Trikonasana with your right leg forward. Is this making sense? Hopefully, I know it can get confusing. And then, since you're already with your right foot forward, you just bring your left knee down and stretch into Ardha Hanumanasana with your right leg forward at the top. Okay, so that would even mean that we've done Surya Namaskar be activating both of the legs in Warrior One on both of the legs, because we've performed, Surya Namaskar has a right and a left side because you're doing Warrior One. So you would have already done it on the right leg at the beginning, and then you would perform it on the left leg. We didn't have to start back in Utkatasana to take this over to the other side. We just started from plank pose, just to use that warrior to come into the other side. And then it's time for you to finish. You can add a few more asanas in, but all we ask of you is 5 asanas. So the last one that we would have left is our twist. We've kept it until the end. It doesn't have to be like that. You can place your twist wherever you want. It can be at the beginning, it can be in the middle. We could have made you twist in Utkatasana and hold a rotated or a revolved chair pose. Yeah, that twist really can happen anywhere. Trikonasana is also considered an open-chested twist. So if you're here with your right leg forward, then you want to lie down essentially. It's up to you if you want to take one last chaturanga, upward facing dog, downward facing dog. Look at your hands, step, walk, or jump, come into halfway lift, and then sit down on your mat and lie down. Or maybe they're still in Ardha Hanumanasana and you just want to say, come into tabletop. Now sit in Vajrasana, swing your legs over to the side and come into seated position, Dandasana, which is Prarambhik Sthiti, but in Vinyasa we call it Dandasana. And then lie down and come into Supta Udarakashanasana. And you would guide that on the right and on the left. It's not so big of a deal here if you do the right and left because you're already at the end of the class. It would be weird if we did every single asana on the right and on the left. If we did Ekapada Pranamasana, right, left. Now come into Trikonasana, right, left. Now come into Ardha Hanumanasana, right, left. Now come into Supta Udarakashanasana, right, left. That would be, that's totally Hatha. Yeah, it's just not in Satyananda order. But try not to do every single repetition on one side and then directly on the other. The reason why we're getting you to do Surya Namaskar B, to link in, is to get this flow going. So what if you choose 5 asanas that don't have a side? Say you choose Goddess Pose, Kaliyasana, Paschimottanasana. Say you choose 5 asanas that don't have a right or left. You still have to squeeze in Surya Namaskar B at some point in there for us, please. That way, we see that you're capable of linking. Okay. Now, what if one asana doesn't have a right or left, like say Goddess Pose, but the rest of your flow does? How do you decide? Am I going to redo the asana? Do I do it the same way? Do I skip it out? It's up to you. Do you want to go back to Goddess Pose? Do you want to do it the same way, or do you want to change and do a shoulder stretch? Do you want to sway in Goddess Pose? You can either redo it the exact same way. If you've already done it, you can take it out completely, or you could do it but change something and make it a little bit different. So it is totally up to you. What we want from you for your Vinyasa intermediate micro lesson is that you choose 5 main asanas that link in with your theme. These 5 main asanas, you're holding them for 5 breaths. And to change from one leg over to the other, you're including Surya Namaskar B. Either the first half, which would be from Utkatasana all the way into Warrior One. You don't have to hold Warrior One for 5 breaths. From Warrior One, you can go into whatever standing asana is closest to you there that you want to go into. Or you can use the second half of Surya Namaskar, which would be from Chaturanga and then into Warrior One, skipping out Utkatasana and everything that comes before. Okay, so now it's time to look at point number 8, which is Shavasana. So in an ideal world, this Shavasana is anywhere between 7 and 10 minutes, depending on how long your class is. If we're doing a 5-hour back-bending workshop, I'm going to make this Shavasana 15 to 20 minutes. Why not? You deserve it. Okay, for the micro lesson, we're going to say just a maximum of 3 minutes, and it needs to tie in with your theme. So you can tell a story if you want to tell a story. You can guide a body scan if you want to guide a body scan, as long as it's going to link in with your theme. So whatever you're doing, relate the theme back into your Shavasana. Okay, and then after Shavasana, it's point number 9, and that's tune out. So after the Shavasana, you wake your students up gently. You tell them to wiggle their fingers and their toes, however you want to get them out. Maybe you want to sing to them, maybe however gently you want to be. Remember, you're not being very harsh and you're not saying, chop, chop, stand up, okay? So you get them to sit back on their mat and it's time to tune out. For the micro lesson, we're going to tune out the same way we have always done in Gayatri Yoga School. Your 3 Aums, your Maha Mantra, and your Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. They're intermediates. You don't have to explain to them what the Maha Mantra is or why you're singing the Maha Mantra this time. You don't have to demo anything. You just tune out with them. Make sure that you place their hands in Pranama Mudra. Now, if you make a mistake in your micro lesson, it's an opportunity to learn. As long as your students are healthy and they are not in danger, then it's okay. If you forget to place a student's hands in Pranama Mudra for the mantra, they're not going to die. It's not a big deal. The reason why we do this is because it's a sign of respect, and that way you can feel the vibrations, and it's a nice connection moment with yourself. But if it's missed out, it's no big deal, okay? So even in your flow, you are allowed your notes for your micro lesson. You can have all of your notes sprawled out on the mat. The thing is, you're not allowed your notes in your hand. It's just very difficult to perform your hands on assists. It doesn't look like you're very prepared. Imagine if I taught all of my classes, now come in to Urdhva doing the hands on assist like this. Come into Adho Mukha Svanasana. Wait, it's just not very nice. So we're gonna try and get you out of the habit of having your notebook in your hands. Which means you wanna make sure that your notes are very clear for you, because when you are guiding, you are standing, yeah? For the micro lesson, try not to demo too much. Obviously, it gets confusing sometimes, especially with right and left, and sometimes our words just get muddled up. So you can do little mini demos. You can say, okay, we're gonna come into revolved warrior, reverse warrior, place your left hand on your thigh, your right hand up into the sky, but then come out of your demo and continue teaching. Make sure that if you are demoing, you're not stopping the class completely to look at your flow. It's just choppy. They've warmed up, they're ready to move. They don't want to look at you and study your flow for 3 minutes while you perform all of the asanas. It's not your turn to perform the asanas. So really try and use your words as much as you can. I know that English isn't everybody's first language, so you are never marked for your English. And it's actually a really beautiful way to link your theme in with the class, because sometimes if you can't think of the word, you can use metaphors. Reach up and grab the beautiful apple in the tree and bring it down. However you need to explain things can also really beautifully link in with your theme. So like I said, when you're tuning out and for the entire class, if little mistakes are made, it's not that big a deal. You always learn from your mistakes. And again, as long as your students are in good health, that is your main priority, that you're not causing injury or trauma to them in any way. Once you've tuned out, you find a way to close the class. You might want to link it with the theme, say they've set an intention. You might want them to repeat the intention and then sing the mantras to seal that intention. You might want to bring their thumbs to their third eye to connect with their Ajna chakra, their inner wisdom. It's totally up to you. Hari Om Tat Sat, may this be the ultimate truth, the ultimate reality is always a beautiful way to close. Just saying thank you is also another beautiful way. So yes, if this was a Hatha class, this would have been 10 points because that extra Shavasana after Surya Namaskar. But because this is a Vinyasa class, then you finish at 9 points. So that is your Vinyasa intermediate micro lesson explanation.